MHM. The glass was still warm in my palm when I stepped back through those thick cedar doors. 63 years old, and I had just signed it. Finalized the last papers that morning at the notary's office on Front Street West. 31 years of growing sterling cold chain logistics. Frozen transport across Alberta, Manitoba, and into the Northwest. And now it belonged to a firm. $4.8 million after taxes and cuts. Sitting in a fund with my name on it. My account manager called it life-changing wealth. I called it 31 years of sore knees, missed holidays, and exhaust smoke. My boy had picked the bistro. The Horizon on Wellington Street in Ottawa. The kind of place where the menus have no prices and the waiter introduces himself by first name. I'd driven past it 1,000 times and never gone in. My boy said it was the right place to celebrate. He booked the reservation himself. I should have been happy. I was happy. At least I thought I was. The maitre d' led me to the table near the glass where my boy was already seated with his wife. They stood up when they saw me. My boy, tall, the same dark eyes as his mother, hugged me the way he used to when he was small. Before the years put distance between us. His wife smiled and said I looked wonderful. I told her she was too kind. We ordered sparkling water and a bottle of Chateau de Champs, a Niagara Red that my boy said he'd researched for the occasion. It was a Wednesday evening mid-October, and the dining room had that particular hush that expensive restaurants always have. Like everyone has agreed to keep their voice down and their posture up. My boy raised his glass almost immediately. To Dad, he said. To what you built. His wife echoed it. To what you built. I drank. The wine was good. I told him so. We talked about ordinary things at first. The drive down from Smith Falls. Whether the highway construction in the 416 would ever finish. My boy asked about the transition period. I had agreed to consult for the new owners for 90 days just to smooth the handover of key accounts. Standard arrangement. He asked questions about it that surprised me. Specific questions about asset structures and whether certain equipment leases transferred with the sale or reverted. I answered them. I didn't think much of it at the time. My boy's wife excused herself to the restroom. My boy leaned forward. Dad, have you thought about what comes next? Not just investments. I mean the whole structure. Who holds power of attorney going forward? Who's the executor on the estate? I looked at him. Your name's on all of it, same as it's been since your mother passed. He nodded slowly, like I'd confirmed something he already knew. Right. And you're comfortable with that? Because there are some structures, family trusts, that kind of thing that could protect you from probate, save the estate considerably. I told him I'd talk to my lawyer about it. He said he'd already spoken to someone himself, a financial planner he'd worked with. And maybe we could sit down together with that person in the coming weeks. I said, sure. We can do that. His wife came back. The conversation shifted to my grandchildren's hockey schedule. We were halfway through the main course. I had ordered the Arctic Char because it felt appropriate for the occasion. When my phone buzzed in my jacket pocket, it was a message from my financial advisor about the wire confirmation for the final tranche. I excused myself from the table and stepped toward the front of the restaurant near the coat check to read it properly and send a quick reply. I was standing there squinting at the screen when I felt someone stop beside me. I looked up. It was one of the young servers, early 20s, neat in his white shirt and black apron. The kind of serious face that suggested he took the job more carefully than most people his age take anything. He kept his voice low. He didn't look at me directly. He said, I'm sorry to approach you like this, sir. I don't want to cause a scene and I could be completely wrong. He paused. But I was refilling the water glasses a few minutes ago and I saw the gentleman at your table. I think he may be your son. I saw him take something from his jacket pocket and put it into your wine glass. I don't know what it was. I just thought you should know before you go back. I stood there for a moment. The coat check attendant was folding a scarf nearby and pretending not to hear. I looked at the young server. His name tag said Theo. I asked him to describe exactly what he saw. He did. He was calm and precise about it. He said it happened quickly, maybe 4 seconds, while his back was turned to set down the water pitcher. He said it looked like a small folded paper or a capsule of some kind. He said he almost didn't say anything. He said he had a father of his own. I thanked him. I told him to go about his evening normally. I stood at the coat check for another 30 seconds breathing. Then I went back to the table. My son was cutting a steak. His wife was talking about a kitchen renovation they're planning in the spring. I sat down. I picked up my wine glass, said I needed to step around the table to look at the view from his side. Some comment about the Parliament building lit up across the canal. And in that movement, casually, I set my glass down near his place setting and picked up the one in front of him. Neither of them noticed. Or if they did, they didn't say anything. I watched my son reach for his glass without looking at it and take a long drink. About 20 minutes later, his wife asked if he was feeling all right. His face had gone pale. He said he felt strange, like the room was tilting. She asked if it was the wine. He said he didn't think so. He put his hand flat on the table like he was trying to steady himself. Within 5 minutes, he couldn't sit up straight. His wife was frightened. She called for help. The manager came over and then Theo was there and someone called 911. My son was lowered to the floor. He kept trying to say something to me, but the words weren't landing right. His wife was crying. I knelt beside him. I looked at his face. My son's face, the same face I had watched sleep in a crib in our house in Smiths Falls 37 years ago. And I felt something break open in my chest that I don't have a word for. Not anger. Not triumph. Something much older and much worse than either of those things. I told him the ambulance was coming. I told him to breathe. The paramedics arrived in under 9 minutes. They were efficient and kind. Before they took him out, one of them turned to his wife and said they needed to know if he had taken anything, any substances, any medication not prescribed. She said no, nothing. Just wine with dinner. The paramedic looked at me. I said the same thing and then I said, "You should test his blood for anything unusual." The paramedic looked at me for a moment longer than was comfortable and then nodded. His wife rode in the ambulance. I followed in a cab. The hospital was the Ottawa General. I sat in the waiting room for 2 hours with a paper cup of Tim Hortons coffee that someone had pressed into my hand. A social worker came and sat with me for a while and asked if I had anyone to call. I said no, not tonight. What I didn't say out loud, what I had been sitting with since Theo stopped me at the coat check, was that I had suspected something was wrong for almost 3 months. It started with small things. My son calling more frequently, asking about the sale process, asking questions that a loving son would ask, but also that a very interested party would ask. Then a conversation I overheard by accident when I called him one evening and he hadn't realized the phone had connected. His voice and another voice I didn't recognize talking about timelines, talking about the estate, talking about when the old man signs. I hung up quietly. I sat in my kitchen in Smiths Falls for a long time. I didn't confront him. I called my lawyer the next morning and we quietly began restructuring. The power of attorney was revised. The estate documents were amended. Everything that had my son's name on it now had a trust structure around it with a corporate trustee, a law firm in Toronto. My son knew none of this. The sale of the company proceeded normally. I behaved normally. I had dinner with him and his wife 3 weeks before that evening at Le Mirador. And I laughed at his jokes. And I helped carry dishes after the meal. And I thought every single day that I was wrong. That I had misheard the phone call. That the questions were just the questions of a son who cared. The blood test confirmed what Theo had seen. The substance was a high dose of a sedative that in a man my age with mild hypertension would have looked like a cardiac event. That's what the toxicologist told police. It might not have killed me. It also might have. My son was charged. The other voice in the phone turned out to be a financial consultant he had hired. A man with a history of involvement in similar situations, none of which had been prosecuted. The plan, as I later understood it from the police, was for me to become incapacitated, for my son to act as power of attorney while I was incapacitated, and to move a significant portion of the sale proceeds into accounts he controlled before I recovered or before anyone noticed. Clean, quiet, almost invisible. His wife, and I believe this completely because I know her and because the investigation confirmed it, had no idea. She had married my son in good faith. What she was living with afterward is her own story to tell, not mine. My son was released on bail. He is awaiting trial. His lawyer says the charges may be reduced. My lawyer says that's unlikely given the forensic evidence. Either way, I will be in a courtroom sometime in the next year sitting across from my son, and I do not know yet what that will feel like. What I know is this. I am not destroyed by it. I want to be clear about that, because I think people expect you to be destroyed by something like this. And when you're not, they assume you're in denial or you haven't processed it. I have processed it. I process it every morning when I wake up in my house in Smiths Falls and make coffee and listen to CBC radio and feed my neighbor's dog when she's working nearly shift. I am 63 years old and I have buried a wife and built a company from a single refrigerated truck into a fleet of 47, and I know the difference between being broken and being changed. I am changed. My son is my son. That fact does not switch off. I don't know if he will ever explain to me what happened inside him, what need or fear or greed accumulated until it became a plan, until it became a capsule in a jacket pocket at a dinner table. I have replayed every year of his childhood looking for the moment I missed. The thing I didn't give him or the thing I gave him too much of. I don't find it. Maybe it's not there. Maybe some damage happens to people that their fathers didn't cause and can't fix. I have not visited him. I've written him one letter. I told him I love him because it's true. I told him what he did was a choice he made and will have to answer for. I told him I hope that one day on the other side of whatever is coming, there might be something to rebuild. I don't know if that's possible. I think it might be the bravest thing I have ever written. What I did not expect, and I want to say this slowly because I mean every word of it, was Theo. About a week after that evening, after things had quieted down enough that I could think in a straight line, I called Lemurus Duor and asked to speak to the manager. I explained who I was. I said I wanted to understand what had happened from their perspective. And I asked about the young server who had spoken to me. The manager, to her credit, was forthcoming. She said Theo had filed a full incident report immediately after the ambulance left, as the restaurant's policy required. She said he was one of their most conscientious staff. I asked if I could pass along a letter and an envelope for him, care of the restaurant. She said she would make sure he received it. I don't want to say what was in the envelope because that's between me and Theo, but I will say this. He had taken a risk that night. He could have told himself it was none of his business. He could have refilled the water glasses and gone on with his shift. He was 23 years old and he stopped to say something to a stranger because he thought it was the right thing to do. I put in the letter that his instinct was correct. That good instincts in young people are rarer than anyone tells them. That I hoped he was going to be all right in the world. He wrote back. A short note, careful handwriting on plain paper. He said he came from a family where looking out for people was just what you did. He said his father had taught him that. He said he was glad I was okay. I have that note on my refrigerator door in Smiths Falls next to a photo of my wife from 1987 and a takeout menu from the Thai place in Perth that I keep meaning to throw away. I don't know what I'm building next. The company is gone. The fight is still ongoing in the courts. My son's face on side of a lawyer's table is a thing I'm learning to carry. But I am 63, not 83. I still have my health, my house, my neighbor's dog on Tuesday mornings. I still have whatever it is that makes a person get up and try again, and I have learned more clearly than I ever wanted to that it doesn't always come from the people you raised. Sometimes it comes from a 23-year-old in a white shirt and a black apron who just thought you should know. I've had a lot of time to think sitting in this house in Smiths Falls with the radio on and nobody asking me anything. That's the strange gift of all this. The quiet. What I keep coming back to isn't the betrayal itself. It's how long I had been ignoring the feeling that something was off. There were signs. The phone call I overheard. The questions Mitchell kept asking about estate structures, about timelines, about what happens after. I told myself I was reading too much into things. That a son asking about his father's finances was just responsible. Just caring. I wanted that to be true. So I made it true in my head for longer than I should have. That's the first thing I'd say to anyone in a similar situation. The instinct that something is wrong is almost always correct. Not because people are generally bad, but because the body knows before the mind admits it. I knew. I just didn't want to pay the price of knowing. There's a version of the story where I don't restructure the estate quietly. Where I don't call my lawyer that morning after the overheard phone call. Where I trust completely and go back to that table at the Mirador and drink from my own glass. I've thought about that version a great deal. It ends differently. The consequences of what Mitchell planned were not abstract. They were medical, legal, and very nearly permanent. The choices I made in the weeks before that dinner were not clever or strategic. They were just the choices of a man who somewhere underneath the part of himself that wanted everything to be fine was paying attention. And then there was Theo. I don't think Theo is extraordinary in the way that word usually gets used. He didn't do anything heroic in the dramatic sense. He saw something that troubled him and he made a decision to say something about it to a stranger knowing full well it might embarrass him, might be wrong, might cost him. That's not heroism. That's just integrity at a small scale. In a quiet moment when nobody would have blamed him for staying silent. In my experience, that's actually the harder version. Grand gestures are easy compared to the small ones that nobody will ever applaud. What I want to carry forward from all of this, and I mean actually carry, not just say, is that the quality of your life is shaped almost entirely by the quality of your attention. Not your success, not your reputation, not how much you built or sold or accumulated. Your attention. What you notice. What you're willing to see even when it's painful. What you do with the thing you've noticed even when doing something about it is costly and uncomfortable and doesn't guarantee any particular outcome. Mitchell made choices. He'll answer for them. I don't spend much time being angry about it, which surprises people when I say it. Anger would require me to believe he's something other than my son, and he isn't. He is my son who made choices I don't understand and can't forgive yet and may never fully explain. That's a complicated thing to hold. I hold it anyway because putting it down doesn't seem like an option. What I do know at 63, having built something real and lost something real in the same year, is that the people who matter most are often not the ones closest to you. Sometimes they're a 23-year-old server named Theo with careful handwriting and a father who taught him well. You don't get to choose where integrity shows up. You just have to be paying enough attention to recognize it when it does.